Big announcement today for competitive Pokemon. A bunch of announcements made about the 2026 season, and I'm feeling not great about it. I mean, I don't want to exaggerate. It's not a disaster or anything, but it probably doesn't mean much to me at all. Anything that's been announced here. We'll talk about why, but because of that, yeah, I'm feeling kind of flat here. Not really getting to participate in the initial hype for the season, which is a little bit disappointing, but not the end of the world. But nonetheless, we'll take a look at what they've announced, and I guess that's today's video. Unless I do two on the same day, which I guess I could, but otherwise, we'll interrupt the VGC Legends series for a little bit. This announcement actually came out while I was in the middle of recording one of those videos, and it totally threw me for a loop. It kind of derailed the video for a while. That'll probably go up in about a week, depending on how I move the schedule around. But check that series out anyway if you haven't yet. I get a random legendary Pokemon each episode, and I build a team around it and ladder with that team. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, Pokemon Championship Series 2026. Big announcement. I don't have a lot to say about most of it. I'm getting a phone call, so I'm actually going to pause the recording. It was a scam call. Should have known from the caller ID. Anyway, let's jump in. All right, locals start in TCG and Go locals start July 1st. VGC locals start September 1st. I have no locals in my area, not really of any interest to me. If I ever find locals, I'll be happy to go to them, but they haven't reached this part of Canada, as far as I can tell. And I do check every now and then. But good news for a lot of players. I read this section on adjusting Swiss tournament rounds. It looks like they're going back to 9 rounds of Swiss on day one of an event. It is kind of funny how it's worded, because it's kind of like we're adding an additional round of Swiss. We're totally... It's just, they cut it down to 8 last season, and now, if I understand this correctly, they're going back up to 9. 9 rounds of Pokemon in one day is pretty tiring, but I mean, it's what a lot of us were doing for a while, so that's cool. I'm not mad. I've never yet made a day 2. If I go to any events this season, and we'll get to that question, I'm not upset to play a little bit more, although I don't think I've yet had a round 9 where I was locked in, let's say. But yeah, I like it, I think. The other thing that's interesting here is that they are capping top cut at 16 players instead of 32. That, I think, will ruffle some feathers. It's not much to me personally, and this is a me personally kind of video, because I've never done that well in a tournament anyway. If I ever do, maybe it'll ruffle my feathers, but players hate it when people miss top cut on resistance, and the Pokemon Company International has done pretty well now lately on cutting down on the situations where that happens. Might happen more often now that they're shrinking top cut. If you don't know, the way top cut works is it's the top 8 players plus anyone who has the same record as number 8. So it can be any number up to whatever the theoretical limit is based on the number of players in Swiss rounds. I don't know. But yeah, 17th place missing top cut on resistance would be pretty unfortunate. I think the championship point adjustments probably mitigate that. I've seen people saying it. But anyway, that's what's going on with that. Oh, also that there's another round of Swiss now, so that'll shrink the pool of players at those high-end records, right? That much harder to go undefeated or one loss or something when you have to play an extra round, and you're facing opponents at your level of results all the way. This is about TCG. I don't play the TCG. I haven't even read this. I don't think I'd understand it anyway. Championship point table adjustments. We don't have the tables here, but my understanding is basically at major in-person tournaments, they're increasing points payouts to people who do very well, like top 64 and up or something like that, but don't make top cut. So this is the compensation for that hypothetical 17th place player who misses top cut on resistance. They'll still get more points than they would have gotten last season. We also see grand challenges and global challenges providing separate rewards for rating zone. To provide more opportunities to earn championship points in smaller rating zones. So I think what that means is if you're number 1 in Oceania, you'll get the same points as number 1 in Europe, or at least if you're number 1 in Oceania and you get fewer points than number 1 in Europe, your points won't be reduced because they did better than you. I don't know whether it'll actually be the exact same payout. Like I said, I haven't seen the tables. But whatever is number one in Oceania, that's locked in, and Europeans and North Americans and so on can't influence that. And likewise, Latin America locked in, Middle East and South Africa presumably. So that's nice. I might be trying to cook hard for the online challenges this coming season. We'll see. I never really did that this past season, but we'll see what else I have to play for. There's something about locals. League challenge kickers have been adjusted to better reflect average attendance. I don't go to locals. I don't have any to go to. I don't know what the impact of that is. I would have to see the table anyway. And then, yeah, I should have read before talking off the cuff. More championship points have been allocated to 9th through 64th place at championship events. So just like I said, 9th place means you can make top cut and still, depending on how the bracket shakes out, and still get those extra points. But basically, players who do very well at major tournaments and narrowly miss top cut get more points than they would have before. That's cool. Pokemon Go travel award and travel stipend. I don't play Pokemon Go. I don't even know how PvP works in Pokemon Go. I didn't know that there was PvP until I started going to VGC events, and there was also a Go component. The Ace Trainer Rewards program is returning. If I go to any in-person events, this will be a nice goal for me to work toward, as it was this season. So I like that. Pokemon Unite Championship Series Regional League debut. I don't play Unite. I don't know what this is saying. Then we have a season calendar. They've announced some events. We'll look at that in a second. Of course, the big disappointment that you knew was coming on this channel, if you've seen the announcement already, NAIC is staying in New Orleans. LAIC in Sao Paulo. EUIC in London. February. I might have just for the first time right now had a thought in my head about going to EUIC. I don't know if the February timing would work for me, but that's something to think about later. But yeah, NAIC is staying in New Orleans. It's not really a surprise. There was a lot of speculation that they had a multi-year contract with the venue and everything, and at least 3 years was a pretty reasonable guess. I am obviously disappointed that it's staying in the United States. I stand by what I said in a video that I've surely put in the cards, that NAIC as the international championship for North America, obviously players travel from all over the world to play in it, but it is the one place in North America meant to be the most accessible of the international championships to North American players. And with the TPCI region being both the United States and Canada, I think it is really inappropriate to have it in the United States right now, because that country has taken a very hostile stance toward Canada. Their president repeatedly threatens to annex us. He talks specifically about using economic force to annex us. And at the same time, he is actually throwing around economic force by imposing tariffs that are designed to do harm to our economy and to some extent bend us to his will. I don't know if that's necessarily how serious he is about annexation, but he is trying to use a sledgehammer to influence us in some ways. And he talks about annexation being one of the ways that he wants to do it, even as that's overwhelmingly unpopular here in Canada. And I personally, joining the US is one of the last things I'd want to do. So because of that, I mean, I think it'll probably be years before I go to the US again, if ever. I certainly wouldn't go just for a Pokemon event. I think it would take an actual life or death emergency pretty much to get me there. Maybe if I had a job that required travel there, which I don't, that would be a tougher thing to think about. But yeah. I think, look, maybe different people have different opinions. I think a Pokemon tournament is not a good enough reason to go to the US. I think it's a totally inappropriate thing to even think about. And I won't be going to NAIC next year unless things are very, very different. And if they don't move it out of the US and presumably to Canada just because that's the only other country in the region, I'm kind of disappointed. I don't know how long I have to compete. I've loved NAIC every time I've gone. I don't know if I'll ever go again. I'm not saying I'll never go to the US again, but it would take some serious changes to get me to think about it. Okay, I rambled about that longer than I meant to. All of that said, even if it might be the case that even if they tried to move NAIC out of New Orleans, and again, I don't think it's likely that they did, but hypothetically if they did, they might have been unable because there might have been contractual obligations spanning multiple years. So the dream of NAIC moving out of the US, I think, is exactly as alive as it's always been, which is just a little bit, kind of hanging by a thread. I don't think that them not moving it this year necessarily means that they never will. They might not have. They might genuinely not have had a choice. But right, at least in practical terms, right, without incurring significant penalties. But I definitely was hoping to see a different country mentioned here this year, and that's not the case. And that brings me to the big disappointment. I mean, again, that's kind of overstating it. The medium disappointment. My overall emotional response to this news, there's some tournament circuit tweaks that are kind of nice. I like that Ace Trainer Rewards is staying. I like the adjustment to online challenges, but mostly I'm just feeling kind of flat and disappointed about the announcement because here are the events that they've announced: Frankfurt, Monterrey, Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, Belo Horizonte, Lille, Gdansk, Las Vegas, Buenos Aires, LAIC, Stuttgart, Birmingham, Merida, Auckland, Santiago, EUIC, Seville, Querétaro, never heard of that place before, Utrecht, Lima, and NAIC. So there's not a lot in North America there, right? There are a ton of European events announced, which I realized when I saw the actual list is kind of skewing things. But I scrolled through this list at first. There's nothing in Canada announced so far. Let's be clear, these are not going to be all of the events for the season. They haven't actually announced very much in North America at all yet. There are going to be more regionals, especially in North America, because they're usually a bunch, and they've only announced a few here. But right now, nothing in Canada. A little bit in Mexico. That's kind of far. If you held a gun to my head right now and you said you have to choose one of these announced events to go to, you have no choice. You must go to an event, and it must be one that was announced today. So I was going to say it's probably Birmingham, because that's the closest that's not in the US, or maybe Frankfurt, because there are a lot of flights to there, relatively easy to get to, and I could go on vacation to Germany. That would be nice. I actually think the answer might be EUIC. I honestly might think about going to EUIC, because what else am I going to do? But there'll probably be at least a Toronto regional and a Vancouver regional, right? There usually are, but I'm not taking it for granted. But as things stand right now, they've announced a bunch of events. They're starting the hype cycle for the 2026 season. And there's nothing here that I'll even think about going to. Except, I guess, the UIC, which I realized on the spot as I was recording this, within the last 10 minutes or so, that I might think about. But that's it. An EUIC is a tall order. That timing, overseas. There are a lot of reasons it might not work out. I will think about it. But there's absolutely nothing else here for me. And let's be clear, let's not overreact to this. There will be more events announced. It should be fine. I mean, it should be as fine as it was ever going to be. I should be able to go to at least one regional, have a fun season. Try to get Ace Trainer, maybe. Maybe actually cook for the online challenges this time. But look, again, it's not a huge deal, but I do kind of want to voice how I'm feeling. It's like a really mild, timid slap in the face that they're starting a hype cycle, and someone in my position who is a Canadian player and can't in good conscience go to the United States. Not only, by the way, because of the annexation thing. That's probably the biggest reason, but like so many horror stories about people's devices being searched at the border and people being disappeared for a couple weeks, especially if they've criticized the leader online, which I certainly have. So if I went to a US event, I'd be, violating my principles and taking on personal risk for the privilege of doing that. And it's just pretty distasteful to go to a budding fascist dictatorship and hang out and have fun, I think. But the big thing is, I don't know if I ever properly spelled this out earlier in this video, but I have others where I talk about it. It feels traitorous to me, honestly, to go and spend money in the US and hang out there and have fun. But especially spend the money when they keep threatening to use money, specifically Economic Night, to just crush my own country and make me part of something that I want no part in. I'm getting more worked up than I said I would. I should not be getting this worked up. There will be more events announced. There will probably be some in Canada. I probably will have something to go to this season. But it just doesn't feel good that that's not accounted for in the initial announcement. And there could be any number of reasons that it's not accounted for, right? Like, I don't know what goes into planning these events. I don't know what goes into scheduling. There are noticeably a bunch more European events announced than North American ones, so maybe North American events take longer to get final confirmation. So I have no idea. But yeah, it just feels a little bit cold from TPCI. And I'm not trying to make a big thing about it. I'm not trying to rile anybody up, but I am, I guess, trying to vent a little bit. Vent a little bit for a little bit of a problem. So the first events of the season were announced. If you're American, you can start thinking about Pittsburgh, Milwaukee, Vegas. That's cool, I guess. If you're in Europe, you've got a bunch to plan for. If you're in Mexico or Brazil or those broader regions, got some stuff to look to. Me? Yeah, kind of hard to have any interest in this upcoming VGC season. I mean, I forced my way through the talk about the format changes, but it's kind of hard to be interested in that at all when there's no event to walk in on and say, I want to go to that. But hopefully that'll come. That's all. I just wanted to talk about that for a bit. Well, happy gaming to those of you who do have something to plan for here.